Hey, what's up YouTube? We're going to do a rear left caliper here, brake caliper. This is a 2012 Nissan Rogue with a 2.5 liter engine. It's the base S model. And without further ado, basically what we need to do is first jack the vehicle up safely and secure it with jack stands. I've already done that off camera, and we have the wheel ready to come off. Now, I have previously, a week ago, did the pads on this and cleaned up the caliper, and that's when I noticed that the caliper was extremely rusted, and it left me for a reason for concern, because obviously that's not good, because if it gets too rusted, it could technically leak or seize or have other problems. In addition to that, I noticed that someone at some point had cross-threaded one of the slider pin fasteners for the caliper that holds it to the bracket. So even though I tried to clean up the threads the best I could, it still won't actually fully tighten. It just keeps spinning because it's basically stripped and cross-threaded. So I went ahead and ordered a caliper for it, and because we live in the Rust Belt, I went ahead and ordered this variety. This is the CarQuest version, and the part number on the side of it here is going to be the 19-B3437, and that includes the caliper. It includes the hardware, so the little stainless steel hardware kit. The banjo bolt is in there, and 2 copper washers. So it's pretty much everything you need. I have some basic hand tool sockets. I have some caliper grease here. This is the stuff that I like here. It works the best. This is for just making sure that the pins are well lubricated on there. And some brake clean just in case I need it. Some basic hand tools and sockets. And I have the little impact there, so it's going to make life a little easier as far as getting everything off here. So let me get you on tripod, and then we'll get started. So the first thing we're going to need to do is, and just to make a note on this too, if you're doing this and you don't have air tools, I'd recommend, before jacking the vehicle up, have some of the weight of the vehicle still on the wheel, so you can crack these lug nuts loose, because otherwise the wheel's just going to keep spinning and you're going to get frustrated. So, but I have the luxury of the air tool / in this case, reusing the battery impact by DeWalt. First thing you're going to do is go ahead and just rip this caliper off. The tools you're I'm sorry, not caliper, hubcap. Geez, I'm really jumping the gun. What you're really going to need is basically a 21mm to take the lug nuts off. And for the caliper, all we should technically need, unless the aftermarket one has different size fasteners, you should need a 17mm socket with a small extension, some form of breaker bar. That's going to take the actual bracket of the caliper off. You're going to need a 12mm, from what I understand, for the banjo bolt, which holds the brake hose on it. And keep in mind, you will be opening up the brake system on this, so you're going to have to bleed the brakes. So keep that in mind. And also, I believe, a 14mm to disconnect the actual caliper from the actual bracket that uses the slider pins. Now, this is going to be a pretty simple job for us, because I was just in here last week, cleaned everything up, and pad slapped it. I just reused the rotors and cleaned them up the best I could. So it has new brake pads and everything's nice and free and loose. So all I'm going to have to do is basically take the caliper off, throw the brake pads on it, check the sliders, bolt it back up, and we're done. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is a 21mm, like I said. Have my impact on loosen. So you're going to have a little bit of noise alert here. I just put the lug nuts in the hubcap. Why not? That's there. So now we get the tire out of the way. Try not to do what I just did, which was bend up your backing plate. Alright, so that's out of the way. It's a little more dramatic than it needed to be. I'm going to bring you in for a closer observation here. So what I did was, and if it looks a little wet under here, it's because I just went through the car wash, and I also fluid filmed this the last time I was here. So here's a look at that caliper right here. Pretty easy job. Like I said, you'll have to bleed the brake hose and everything on there. So let me get up here in a closer view so I can show you better. So this is the bolt here. That's one of these are stripped. I can't remember which one. Is one of the reasons why. Caliper is also pretty rotted too. But first thing we're going to have to do is take out these fasteners here. This is a 17, and there should be, hopefully you can see that right here is the other 17 right there. Hopefully that picked that up. And then I'm not going to disconnect the brake hose until after I've had a chance to first disconnect everything, because I don't want it dripping brake fluid everywhere, because you're going to need a catch pan. I'm going to leave that to the last step I do, so that way I'm just going to let the caliper hang. It's not going to hurt it for a couple minutes. So we'll go ahead and get that rolling there. So just that way you have kind of a visual or a mental note of what I'm doing here. So I'm going to get my breaker, ratchet breaker here. I'm going to put some gloves on too. I completely forgot to do that, so I'm not filthy dirty here within the next 2 seconds. It's a good time to inspect like your brake hose and everything too. Make sure it's in good condition. Look for any cuts, cracks. Make sure that the end of it's not super rusted. Let's see what size we need here. 17. All right, so we need 17 millimeter, which is what I believe it was. Move everything out of the way. Okay, now this part you're going to have to kind of get personal with the vehicle here. Okay, let's find those fasteners. We'll just go to the bottom one since it's looking at me. Okay, so that one's loose. Let's go to the top one here. That one's loose. So now, because that's loose now, I can get my electric impact in here and take out some of the workload here. Should be able to get it in here. All right, noise alert. Just make sure you set these fasteners aside. Let's see, make sure you're still in the right frame of view. And it looks like you're seeing what you need to see. We're going down here for that bottom 17. Take that in the magnetic dish. And now we're going to be harvesting these brake pads and reusing them. So go ahead and lift this off. It came off nicely because obviously, like I said, I was just in here. So, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm just going to pop these brake pads out, sit them in a nice location. Because like I said, they should come out freely because I just did this. So we don't even have to really disassemble this caliper at this point because we're not reusing it. So we're just going to sit it over there and kind of make sure the brake hose isn't being tugged on too much. Grab the new caliper and make sure you guys are in the right frame here. I'm going to see if I can tilt you down a little bit so you can see. You see what I'm doing there? Yeah, you should be able to. I'm going to go ahead and crack loose and prep the caliper here, make sure it's in good shape. I believe that was a 14. Let's see if they kept it the same. Oh, they did. Good. 14 millimeter for the slider pins here. I'm just going to use this to crack it off here real quick. We just want to grease these. Take that out. Like so. Put that aside. Remember where they go, because one has a rubber garment on it. Grommet? I believe it should anyway. Come on. Yeah, so this one has a little rubber on the end of it. That's just, you want to make sure that stays on there. And the whole purpose of this is just to make sure that they did a good job greasing these. So let's see here. So I'm going to remember that the side closest to the bleeder has this little rubber on it. So set those aside. And then I like to take a little bit of that Permatex. I hope you can still see what we're doing here. Let me move in a little bit here. I like to take a little of this Permatex here. Caliper grease. Even though these are coated, I should open these bags up before I start this. been a little easier. Put them down. And then what we'll do here is we're just gonna take and put a little grease where they ride. This helps control rust build up here in the area that we live. Not to do crazy, just nice little coat. Probably not even necessary since these are brand new and coated, but anything I can do to prolong the life of this and keep this from what they call rust jacking on the pad. Okay. Figure out what I do with my grease there. Now I'm going to clean up the inside a little bit. You don't want it getting on your rotor. And he should. Let me make sure you're still seeing what I'm doing here. Yeah, okay. He should just go in like this, I believe. Like that. We'll go ahead and do this side. Oops. Come on, Dan. Get with the program today. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So, not much involved in prepping when you have a new caliper and a new bracket, because you don't have all the rust that you got to clean up like we normally run into. So that's good to go. So there's really no reason why we probably couldn't just go ahead and mount this onto the vehicle, this bracket, and that way we don't have to fight as much with it whenever we're trying to put the pads and everything in. So I'm going to stop you and go ahead and show you that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and grab those fasteners we took out earlier, and we're going to go ahead and get that, probably get in your way here. We'll take our caliper bracket and just put it around the rotor here, and hopefully try to get this started without seeing what I'm doing. There we go. Got that one started. You always want to start this stuff by hand. Otherwise, you're just going to ruin everything. Or cross thread stuff, and that wouldn't be good. Okay, so now we should be able to just take our extension here in our socket that I set somewhere. Actually, let me get a swivel head. Be right back, guys. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. I wanted to grab my swivel socket for the impact here. So this is just so I can more quickly tighten up these back 17mm bracket things here. Fasteners. Whoops. Helps if I'm on tighten. Bottom one. Now I'll go back by hand here and make sure those are tight. I'm sure there is a torquing spec for these, but I'm not really worried about it. As long as you use your taut noodle here. Get under here. Lift up. That's good enough for that one. There, it's good enough for that one. That is not going anywhere, kids. All right. Make sure you're still in the frame here. Looks like you can see pretty much what you need to see. Okay, now we're working on the caliper now. So let's go ahead, throw our pads in. Let's see here. Usually I believe the one that has the sensor on it, the squealer, needs to go on the inside. Make sure they're nice and clean. Perfect. Okay, and then as far as the caliper goes, I like to also put a little bit of grease on the inside of wherever the mating surfaces are. This cuts down on a lot of the squeaking and rattling and noises. Don't need a lot, just a little bit, just to lube them up a little bit. Also cuts down on the rust. Put that like so. And keep, when you go to put this on, keep your rubbers from getting pinched. Little booties. That should stay there for a minute. And if you recall, these are the little sliding pins. We're going to add a little bit more lube to that because that's not quite enough in my opinion. You don't want to put too much, but you want to have enough. It should be plenty. Probably too much, to be honest with you. And if you recall, this one goes closest to the bleeder I said earlier, so the one with the rubber little thing on it there. And then go ahead and lube up your bottom slider pin. Add a little bit more. I like to go onto the fasteners too. It's probably not recommended, but whatever. It helps keep some of the moisture out of there. Okay. Go ahead and slide into the bottom of that one. Always want to start these by hand. Never start these with any kind of tool or anything. Just get them threading in there. Then we can grab our 14. And there's no reason why we can't tighten this down. Down here to the bottom one. I don't have my small socket wrench out here, but I'll try to make this maneuver through here. Like I said, I'm sure there's a torquing spec for this too, but I just use my brain. You don't want to go over tight because you're just going into this cast aluminum, so you'll strip it out like the last person did. Yeah, I was really surprised when I went to do these brake pads on this because, like I said, this top one on here on the old caliper, I had a heck of a time getting it out of there. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's just seizing the caliper. Well, it was cross-threaded, which I don't even know how the heck that even happens. Like, you have to be doing something, having a really bad day. I mean, especially if you start it by hand like you're supposed to and just ram it in there with an air tool, you know. So these, like I said, you don't want tight enough. I think they're like 20-something inch-pounds, 21 maybe, or pound-feet of torque. I'm sure this is probably more than that. So the caliper is installed. So for the bleeder, I'm going to use an 8mm, but I think it's actually, it doesn't quite fit on there snug. So it's probably technically going to be a something else, like that's a standard, probably not metric. I don't know the comparison of what it should be, but so you make sure your caliper moves freely, your brake pads are nice and free in there. I'm not going to crack, I made sure the bleeder cracks loose obviously, but I'm not going to crack it loose yet because we still have to install our brake line yet onto the new caliper. So we're going to work on that here, and let me get you repositioned. Okay, so I'm using my phone to control the GoPro. It seems to be working pretty good. This way I can get you in position back here where I can't reach the camera to turn it on and off. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove on the back of the caliper this little thing here that they put in the bleeding hole for shipping. That just pulls out with a little pick. So we'll remove that first, and then we'll go to the next step. Alright kids, we're back. I can't really see very well, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 14 and take this brake hose off of here. I'm going to use the impact since I don't have anything to brace it with. This should, little noise alerter, should get this off of here. Come on. Easily. We're not reusing this banjo, so it's going to start leaking brake fluid. So have a catch pan ready. I should have probably mentioned that. So that'll take the hose off that we're going to be reusing. Let that run, and we're going to put the caliper, the old one, get rid of that. You may need it for a course, so don't necessarily go throwing it away. You want to make sure that on this brake hose that your copper washers came off, because we want to put new ones on because these are only technically a one-time use. So that came off, and then clean up your hose best you can so there's no debris in it. Alright, that doesn't look too shabby. So now you got your banjo bolt here. Is what this is called. You're going to put a copper washer like that, and then you're going to run it through the brake hose like that, and then you're going to put another copper washer on the other side of it now. And then somewhere back here, in a perfect world, if I can do this blindly, is your bolt hole for the brake hose. I believe this was a 12. Hopefully the new one's the same size. Okay. Now I can find 14. Put that on there. And I will snug that up with a socket wrench, but I have to go get one, so I'll be... Okay, so what I'm doing now is just snugging this up here. Apparently, they changed sizes on me. How nice of them. I should have checked. Apparently, aftermarket feels like a 13. No. What size is that? Let's see here. It's significantly different in size than the original. 12. That's because I put the... or an 11. I'm sorry. It's an 11 now. Feels like an 11. Yeah, that's an 11. Okay, so they changed sizes on you, so beware of that with the aftermarket one, but that's okay. Just want to snug this up, crush them washers down. You don't want this crazy tight, but you don't want it crazy loose either. Try to get in here and not bump you guys. Tight enough for that, so that should be good. Now I like to give it a little quick spritz of the brake clean here, just that way I can notice if there's any leaks or not. Now we're gonna go ahead and get my homemade bleeder here. It's gonna be hard to see this close, but it's basically a bottle with a hose going through it. Make sure your brake fluid is topped off up at the reservoir under the hood. I'll show you that at the end, that way you can at least see. So it should start gravity bleeding. I got the hose on here. I'm going to go ahead and crack this loose and try not to knock my bottle over in the process. Should start gravity bleeding on its own, but we're going to go give it some help here. So I'm going to go up in the vehicle and pump the brakes, and this will get some of the air out of the system. Should see it going through that hose eventually. Look at that there. Oh, good. Yeah, it's working the way it should. Let's see if I can try to loosen that up even more here. So what I'm going to do is I might start it, because you'll usually get a little bit more fluid through it when you start it. So there's going to be a noise alert here in a minute. Feels good. I don't see any bubbles in the hose here. This is a good way to do this if you don't have anybody to help you. So now you can just tighten your bleeder up. You can take your hose off. That should be good enough, because I didn't see very much air, and it did get a good amount of fluid through it, so that's good. So that should now be good. Go ahead and put this back on there. That just keeps the bleeder from that little cap there from getting too rusty. So everything looks good there. I don't see anything leaking. I'm going to give it another quick little spritz of the brake clean. That way I can check for leaks. But other than that, it should be good to go. Everything feels good. I'm going to feel the pedal real quick, see how that feels. You guys see my eyeballs, tell me if that's compressing properly. Yep, that looks good to me. So So we're going to go ahead and roll with that. That should be all you need to do. Like I said, I'll show you under the hood here in a second once I get the camera out of here how to go up and check the reservoir, make sure it's topped off. So go ahead and put the wheel back on and check the reservoir. Alright, so got that caliper on. This is what it looks like. Little view of that. Hose is good, no leaks. Bleeder's snugged up. Caliper's working, releasing the way it should be, so that's a good thing. And then what we'll do is I'll go up here and show you. This is the reservoir under the hood, which is right here. So you just unscrew this cap, make sure the fluid's topped off. It's a little hard to see because the fluid's pretty clean still, but there's a line right here on the side of it that shows you. I'm pretty sure it just takes .3. That's what I just threw in, and it should be fine. So that should be it. So we got your pads on, got your caliper on. Now we're gonna go ahead and get you on tripod and just put the wheel back on. So we'll go ahead and do that next. All right, we're back again. Sorry for the stopping and starting and all that chaos. They said unfortunately I don't have a camera guy. I'm working out in the driveway, so I got to do a lot of stop and starting and maneuvering and moving the camera around and blah blah blah. So go ahead and put the wheel back on. We double checked that there was no leaks and everything. I'm going to take one last look at everything, make sure it looks good, get the wheel to stay. Or not. Double check everything here. Everything looks good and dry. Hose looks like it's in good shape still. Nothing leaking around the bleeder. Yeah. Caliper's nice and free, working properly. No reason we can't put the tire back on now. Whoops. You can see that, Justin. This isn't my car, obviously. Okay. Line that back up. And you always want to start these lug nuts by hand. Never want to just go cramming them on. So what I do is I run them down with the impact sort of snug. Just a couple little mini ugga-duggas, if you want to call it that. And then after I do that, I go back with a torque wrench. I believe it's either 80 or 83 pound-feet of torque. I'd look that up and see what the specs are for that. And then should be good there. Noise alert. All right, so now go ahead and jack the vehicle up a little bit to get the jack stands out from under it. I'll just go ahead and show you that. I got the jack behind it here. Looks like it's wiggling, so that means it's off the jack stands. Noise alert. Move jack stands. I got one on the other side. And also mentioning you should chuck your tires obviously before you start this process, just to keep from drifting. Our torque wrench ready to go. Should go in a crisscross pattern. I like to go over them twice at least. Alright, then put your hubcap back on. Now your hubcap has a little area right here that's cut out for your valve stem. You want to make sure you line that up first, and then just give it a nice little what have you. And that's it, kids. So not a great video, not super informative. It's more of just we're just doing a caliper on a vehicle that's already had the pads replaced. The rotor was in decent shape, still usable. And the last time I was on this vehicle, I put new pads on it, took everything apart, cleaned everything, made sure everything was nice and free. And that's when I noticed that this caliper on this side was really rusted. In addition to not only being really rusted, like I had said earlier in the video, the upper slider pin fastener was stripped out inside the caliper itself. Looks like somebody ran it in with an air tool or something like that and just cross-threaded it and just tore up the threads. I tried to clean it up, but it wasn't savable. So I figured, you know what, caliper wasn't too expensive, went and ordered it. Keep your old one. You'll probably need to take that back for a core, especially if you're going through like Advanced Auto or something like that. And then that's pretty much it. I mean, it's not a super hard job. Helps if you have somebody available, if you don't have as many of the tools as I have to bleed it. You can just crack it open and have somebody pump it and hold the pedal down and then tighten the bleeder while the pedal is being held down, and it's going to squirt brake fluid everywhere. So obviously have like a bucket and some cleaning rags and stuff like that and some eye protection. But what that's going to do is the same thing as I did. I just did what I call the one-man bleeder, where I took an old Gatorade bottle, drilled a hole in the cap, ran a hose into it that fits the bleeder on the caliper. There's a little bit of brake fluid in there already, so it doesn't suck air back in the bottle. And that way I could just one-man bleed it through the hose and not have to keep, you know, trying to figure out how to bleed it with nobody around. So that makes it a lot easier. They do sell those, but they even have some of them that even have like a little magnet on them where you can just put it up on like the shock or the strut and hold it there at the store. Little one-man bleeders, and the magnet holds the bottle up out of the way with the hose, so you can do that as well. So if you choose to buy one, I just made one because it has a higher capacity. And that's it. Nothing else really to say. Like I said, not a great video, but hopefully it helps somebody. Like I said, not a professional mechanic. Most people that are watching these videos are probably just simply looking for some quick how-tos. So this was actually way more long-winded than it needed to be. I could have probably had this changed in 15 minutes, but I wanted to take my time and try to explain some of the steps. So at this point, nothing else to see. Thank you for tagging along. If you're still watching by this point, thank you. Please, you know, rate, comment, subscribe. Mainly do these videos for fun, but it is nice to get a little bit of monetization from them too. So I appreciate you guys, and hope this video helps someone out. And if it does, please remember to share it.